It's the beginning of March 2023, and I'm back in the garden at Sandmount. I just have one big ridge or lazy bed, or it started out as lazy bed 2 years ago. It's a bit spread out now, and it's actually very fertile. And even after the winter, there's lots of things still growing there. There's onions and there's garlic, and there's what we call volunteer potatoes. I think I can tell from the colour that they're not great, so I'll probably dig them up. But everything else, if it's growing, I just like to weed it out and give it space to grow. And why pull up something that's growing and that you can eat right away? That's beautiful white turnip there. And this is one of my main food providers over the winter. I call it thousand-headed kale. It's called purple kale. I think it might be called Russian kale as well. But it just keeps on producing. And of course, you can have it raw in the salad, or it's beautiful, kind of shredded up and added to potatoes or pasta. It's really just coming into its own now. The florets are just beginning, and there will be hundreds and hundreds of them before it gives up. I think that's just a purple cabbage. I'll probably replant that. And that's another one, developing head already. My goodness. And there's various things in there, including daffodils and garlic. And something else. Bulbs, flowers, I think, of some sort. A lot of these pots are from my greenhouse in town. Oh, and there's some succulent rocket. Amazing that it survived the winter. But the main task of today is setting the early potatoes. And I have some Home Guard here. Home Guard are arguably Ireland's favourite first early potatoes. You can have second early potatoes and then you go into main crop. But Home Guard, a lovely, lovely potato. And the whole idea of the first earlies in Ireland is that you get them planted before St. Patrick's Day. I think today is the 5th of March, so I'm well ahead of the posse. First thing to do is to select out a bit of the ridge that will accommodate a relatively small amount of early potatoes I'm going to plant. But the ground is friable and easily dug, so it's only a matter of minutes preparing for it. And now, as they say, for something completely different, I am going to show you how to cut potatoes. Now, these potatoes, if you look closely, you'll see they have lovely little green, strong sprouts. And that means the potatoes have been chitted, chitted. And this gives weeks of a start to these early potatoes. But the other thing that was done back in my father's time was to cut the potatoes. You make them into skillans. And it was a task often done by women at the fireside, and they were very adept at using a knife and cutting between the eyes and deciding on what potatoes would be left and what potatoes could be cut was their task. Now, if anybody wanted to get into the mechanics or the physics of this, if you look up the subject of cutting potatoes on the University of Maine website, you'll get all sorts of technical details. But the way we did it was very simple, and it was a matter of deciding that potatoes up to the size of a good-sized chicken's egg was ideally left alone. Anything bigger than that could be cut. Not once, but could be cut twice if it was very, very big. But the most essential thing of the lot is to do what I'm doing here, and that is the cut potatoes, dipping them into my wood ash wood ash from not open fire, but it's a stove I have in town, and this is terrific for healing the potatoes and keeping out diseases. But above all, it gives the potatoes a start in the nutrient of potash. Potatoes just love potash. On top of that, it keeps slugs and worms away. And of course, also, as I'll show you in a minute, they putting a little bit of a concentration into the holes where the potatoes are, it actually keeps birds, and particularly crows at this time of the year, when they're very hungry. It keeps them from digging up your freshly planted spuds. Now, we're ready to plant. I've just adapted a very old spade into what traditionally was called a dibber. And the soil is so beautiful and so deep, I can really plunk those potatoes really quite deep, down to their optimum level of 8 to 9 inches. If anyone doubts my credentials as a potato grower, I must remind you that I was involved in growing potatoes from the 1950s, and particularly in the 1970s when I returned from England and we were put to the pin of our collar to make a living. I grew the most extraordinary potatoes, got the most extraordinary crops, and handled and marketed and sometimes sold door to door hundreds and hundreds of tons of potatoes. Back in the day, we had access to large amounts of very good quality farmyard manure. Today, I just keep the residues from the kitchen in bins and buckets over the winter in my greenhouse, and I dig it into the soil when my buckets are full. The soil that I'm planting into now would have had buckets and buckets of wonderful stuff dug down deep and mixed up with the soil, so that now when it comes to planting, a lot of it is already absorbed into the soil and is available as nutrients for growing the potatoes. If you have ignored all my videos in my Grow Smart Ireland collection, including the 30-minute from grass to planted potatoes video, you could do worse than buying these organic Rooster potatoes in super value. There are very, very good potatoes. Now, Roosters is an Irish, bred variety, but these potatoes actually come from the UK, to our utter shame. But c'est la vie. What can you do about it except lambaste people for not growing one of the finest nutrients on the planet for themselves and saving piles and piles of money? Do you know that you can get as much as 50 times the return on seed? Just reflect back on that small bag of Rooster potatoes from Super Value. On average, there's about 12 potatoes in the pack. Now, because they're organic, of course, you can buy them at a fraction of the cost of so-called certified seed, and you can chit them, as I explained earlier on, and you can plant them, and you could get up to 50 times more produce than you planted. The small bag of organic Roosters from Super Value costs €3. You could, by planting these yourself and using them as seed, get a return equivalent in value to €150. What more can I say to persuade you? Oh, Mary, this London's a wonderful sight, with the people all working by day and by night. They don't sow potatoes, shame on them, nor barley, nor wheat, but there's gangs of them digging for gold in the streets. At least when I asked them, that's what I was told. So I just took a hand in that digging for gold. But for all that I found there, I might as well be where the dark mourn mountains sweep down to the sea.